It's 2:47 a.m. somewhere in the world, and you're here because sleep feels less important than understanding why your heart keeps looking for something it can't name. Tonight, we're diving into dangerous territory, the space between wanting someone and recognizing them, between projection and genuine alignment, between the stories your mind creates and the silent knowing that lives deeper than thought. You know that feeling when someone walks into a room and your nervous system just exhales, not because they're attractive or charming or saying the right things, but because something in you recognizes something in them that has nothing to do with personality or performance. Your brain hasn't even processed what's happening, but your body already knows. That's not romance, that's resonance, and it's rarer than we pretend. Carl Jung said something that haunts me. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what he didn't say, what lived between the lines of his work, is that everything that soothes us about others reveals the parts of ourselves we've been searching for in the wrong places. The people who make you feel at home in your own skin aren't completing you. They're reflecting back the completeness you forgot you already had. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world, usually at hours when the rest of humanity is pretending to have their life together. Adjust your volume, silence your phone, and prepare to question everything you think. You know about connection. You're no longer in your bedroom. You're inside the mind of someone who's tired of confusing chemistry with compatibility, attachment with love, and loneliness with readiness. The good news: the universe has been trying to show you something about alignment for years. The bad news: you've been too busy performing to notice. This video is for those of you who are exhausted from trying to become someone worthy of love instead of recognizing the love you already are. It's for the ones who've been carrying wounds disguised as wisdom, who've confused emotional availability with emotional intelligence, and who've spent so much time healing that you've forgotten what it feels like to just be. The noise in your head, that constant chatter about who you should text, what you should say, how you should present yourself, is actually blocking the most important signals you could ever receive. Your intuition speaks in whispers, not screams. It communicates through the spaces between thoughts, through the quality of silence that settles between you and another person, through the way your breathing changes when someone truly sees you. Most people think recognition is dramatic. They expect fireworks, immediate knowing, some kind of cosmic announcement. But real recognition is quiet. It's the way your shoulders drop when you're with someone whose presence doesn't require you to be anything other than what you are. It's the absence of performance anxiety, the end of the exhausting dance of trying to be interesting or attractive or impressive. The neurobiological reality is this: when you encounter someone whose nervous system is in genuine coherence with yours, your brain literally down-regulates its threat detection systems. Your amygdala stops scanning for danger. Your prefrontal cortex stops calculating outcomes. You enter what researchers call a social safety state, a physiological condition that most people experience so rarely they don't even recognize it when it happens. You've been taught to look for excitement, for the adrenaline rush of uncertainty, for the dopamine hit of being chosen by someone who might not choose you tomorrow. But that's not alignment. That's addiction. True alignment feels like coming home to yourself in the presence of another person. It's not exciting, it's relieving. Here's what nobody tells you about vibrational matching. It happens in the silence between words, in the quality of attention someone gives you, in the way time seems to slow down or speed up when you're together. It's not about shared interests or compatible personalities or even mutual attraction. It's about the invisible field that exists between two people who aren't trying to fix each other, impress each other, or complete each other. Jung called it the participation mystique, the unconscious connection that exists between individuals who share a similar depth of self-awareness. But you can't manufacture this. You can't attract it through visualization or affirmations or any of the spiritual bypassing techniques that promise to deliver your soulmate in 30 days or less. You can only become available to it by doing the hardest thing in the world, being genuinely yourself. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most of what you call yourself is actually a collection of strategies designed to avoid rejection. The person you present to the world is a carefully curated version of who you think you need to be loved. But that version of you can only attract people who are attracted to performances, not to truth. The frequency of authentic connection requires you to broadcast from your actual self, not your aspirational self. It requires you to be seen in your ordinariness, your struggles, your unglamorous moments of just being human. It requires you to stop being so interesting and start being so real that the right person can't help but recognize you. But first, you have to recognize yourself. Every relationship is a mirror, but not in the way the self-help industry would have you believe. You're not attracting your vibrational match or manifesting your soul tribe. You're attracting the exact lessons your unconscious needs to learn, the precise wounds that need healing, the specific growth that your soul signed up for before you were born. Jung's concept of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine archetypes, reveals something profound about attraction that most people miss entirely. You're not drawn to people who complete you. You're drawn to people who activate the parts of yourself that you've either rejected or haven't yet developed. The person who makes your heart race isn't your destiny. They're your curriculum. This is why the person you think you want is rarely the person you end up with long-term. The person you think you want represents your ego's idea of what love should look like. The person you need represents your soul's idea of what growth looks like. And growth, as anyone who's ever truly grown knows, is not comfortable. The myth of Eros and Psyche tells this story perfectly. Psyche falls in love with a mysterious lover who visits her only in darkness, forbidding her to look upon his face. When she finally lights a lamp to see him, she discovers he's beautiful beyond imagination. But her curiosity breaks the spell, and he disappears. She must then complete a series of impossible tasks, journey to the underworld, and nearly die, before they can be reunited. This isn't a story about romantic love. It's a story about the price of consciousness. Real love, the kind that actually transforms you, requires you to see clearly even when seeing clearly destroys your illusions. It requires you to complete the impossible tasks of self-knowledge, to journey into your own underworld, to nearly die to who you thought you were before you can be reborn into who you actually are. Most people want the love story without the underworld journey. They want the beautiful stranger without the tasks that reveal their own strength. They want the happy ending without the death of their false self. But the universe doesn't work that way. The universe is not in the business of making you happy. The universe is in the business of making you whole. And wholeness, true integration of all your parts, shadow and light, is not achieved through finding the right person. It's achieved through becoming the right person. Not right for someone else, but right for yourself. Not perfect, but authentic. Not healed of all wounds, but no longer driven by them. The person who aligns with you vibrationally will meet you at your level of self-awareness, not above it or below it. They will challenge you to grow, but they won't try to fix you. They will see your potential, but they won't love you for who you could become. They will love you for who you are right now, while simultaneously inspiring you to become more yourself. But here's the paradox. You can only attract this kind of love when you no longer need it. When you've done the work of becoming whole on your own, when you've learned to give yourself the love you used to seek from others, when you've stopped using relationships as an escape from the work of being human. The broken part of you that wants to be saved can only attract someone who wants to be the savior. The wounded part of you that wants to be fixed can only attract someone who's addicted to fixing. The empty part of you that wants to be filled can only attract someone who's trying to fill their own emptiness through you. But the whole part of you, the part that has done the work, faced the shadows, integrated the wounds, can attract someone who has also done their work. And that's not a relationship. That's a recognition. There's an energy signature to desperation that repels the very thing you're seeking. It's not that the universe is punishing you for wanting love. It's that need has a frequency, and that frequency is incompatible with the frequency of genuine connection. Think about it. When you're hungry, actually hungry, You can't taste food properly. Your body is in survival mode, focused only on filling the emptiness, not on savoring the flavors or enjoying the experience. Emotional hunger works the same way. When you're starving for love, you can't recognize its subtle forms. You're scanning for anyone who might feed you, not for someone who might truly nourish you. The vibrational signature of neediness broadcasts. I am incomplete. I require someone else to make me whole. I will trade my authenticity for your approval. I will abandon myself to keep you. And the people who are drawn to that frequency are either equally needy, creating a codependent spiral, or emotionally unavailable, because your neediness gives them permission to stay distant while still feeling important. The cruel irony is that the more you need someone, the less likely you are to attract someone worth needing. The more you try to be what you think someone wants, the further you move away from who you actually are. And the further you move from who you actually are, the less likely you are to attract someone who could actually love the real you. Trauma creates vibrational gaps, spaces where love should be but isn't, where self-worth should exist but doesn't, where wholeness should feel natural but feels impossible. These gaps become energetic black holes, constantly drawing in experiences that reinforce the original wound. If you were abandoned as a child, you'll unconsciously attract people who abandon you as an adult. If you were criticized, you'll attract critics. If you were betrayed, you'll attract betrayers. This isn't the universe being cruel. This is the universe being precise. It will continue to send you the same lesson in different forms until you learn it. And the lesson is always the same. You cannot receive from others what you do not give to yourself. The healing isn't in finding someone who won't abandon you. The healing is in becoming someone you won't abandon. The healing isn't in finding someone who won't criticize you. The healing is in developing such a solid relationship with yourself that criticism becomes information, not devastation. The healing isn't in finding someone who won't betray you. The healing is in becoming so loyal to your own truth that betrayal becomes impossible. But here's what makes this work so difficult. Your wounded parts are convinced that they're protecting you. The hypervigilance, the people-pleasing, the emotional walls, the constant analysis of every interaction, these strategies probably saved you once. They got you through situations where being yourself wasn't safe, where love was conditional, where your needs were not just unmet but punished. Your nervous system learned to associate vulnerability with danger, authenticity with rejection, stillness with abandonment. So even when you're safe now, even when you're with someone who could actually see you and love you, your protective mechanisms kick in. You start performing again, strategizing again, trying to earn what's already being offered freely. The practice of healing these vibrational gaps isn't comfortable. It requires you to feel the original pain that created them, to grieve the love you didn't receive, to forgive yourself for the ways you learned to survive. It requires you to slow down enough to notice when you're operating from wound instead of wisdom, to catch yourself in the act of abandoning yourself for someone else's approval. And it requires you to develop what I call comfortable aloneness, the ability to be genuinely okay with yourself, by yourself, not as a spiritual practice or a way to attract someone, but as a way of life. Because until you can be alone without being lonely, you'll use every relationship as a way to escape from yourself. And escape is not love. Your body is a more sophisticated instrument of recognition than your mind will ever be. While your brain is busy analyzing, comparing, and creating stories, your nervous system is constantly assessing, is this person safe? Do they match my frequency? Can I relax in their presence? The science of polyvagal theory reveals that your vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in your body, is constantly scanning your environment for cues of safety or danger. It's monitoring facial expressions, vocal tones, body language, and even the subtler energetic signatures that people carry. When you encounter someone whose nervous system is in coherence, your own system responds by down-regulating. Your heart rate stabilizes, your breathing deepens, your muscles release tension you didn't even know you were holding. This is why genuine connection often feels boring at first. There's no drama, no anxiety, no obsessive thoughts. Your system isn't activated because there's no threat to defend against, no mystery to solve, no game to win. You're not getting The dopamine hit of uncertainty, or the adrenaline rush of potential rejection. You're getting something much rarer, the profound relaxation of being in the presence of someone who doesn't require you to be anything other than what you are. Most people mistake this lack of activation for lack of attraction. They think chemistry requires anxiety, that passion requires uncertainty, that love requires suffering. But that's trauma talking, not truth. Real chemistry is the absence of friction, not the presence of fire. Real passion is the ability to be fully present, not the compulsion to be constantly stimulated. Real love is the experience of coming home to yourself in another person's presence, not losing yourself in their energy. Your body will tell you the truth about someone long before your mind figures it out. When you're with someone who's genuinely aligned with you, you'll notice your breathing naturally synchronizes. You find yourself inhaling and exhaling at the same rhythm without trying to. Your voice changes. It becomes softer, more natural, less performed. You stop trying to sound impressive and start speaking from your actual experience. Time feels different. Conversations that should take 10 minutes stretch into hours, or hours feel like minutes have passed. You forget to check your phone. Your attention is naturally present instead of scattered. Physical contact, even something as simple as a handshake, feels electric but not overwhelming. There's a sense of recognition, of coming home. You sleep better after spending time with them. Your nervous system processes the interaction as nourishing rather than draining. You find yourself being more yourself around them, not trying to be a better version of yourself. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to force these experiences with people who don't naturally evoke them. They try to breathe in sync, speak more softly, be more present, hoping to create the feeling of alignment. But these responses can't be manufactured. They arise spontaneously when two people are genuinely compatible, not when two people are trying to be compatible. The practice of somatic awareness in relationships isn't about finding the right person. It's about becoming sensitive enough to recognize your own responses, honest enough to acknowledge when you're forcing something that isn't naturally there, and self-loving enough to walk away from connections that require you to override your body's wisdom. Your body has been trying to protect you from incompatible connections your entire life. The anxiety you feel around certain people isn't a bug in your system. It's a feature. The way your stomach tightens, your shoulders tense, your breathing becomes shallow around someone is information. Your body is telling you that this person's energy is not safe for your energy, that their frequency is not compatible with your frequency, that aligning with them would require you to abandon yourself. But you've been taught to override these signals. You've been taught that love is supposed to be hard, that good relationships require work, that chemistry is supposed to feel like anxiety. You've been taught to trust your thoughts over your feelings, your hopes over your instincts, your fantasies over your lived experience. The practice of somatic recognition requires you to slow down enough to feel your actual responses instead of your imagined ones. It requires you to trust your body's wisdom even when it contradicts your mind's desires. It requires you to value your own well-being over the possibility of being loved by someone who doesn't actually see you. Synchronicities are not coincidences. They're the universe's way of confirming that you're on the right path, aligned with the right energy, moving toward the right connections. But they're also easily missed if you're not paying attention, easily misinterpreted if you're desperate for signs, and easily forced if you're trying to make something happen that isn't meant to happen. Real synchronicities have a quality of effortlessness to them. They arise naturally, feel meaningful without being forced, and usually involve multiple confirmations across different areas of your life. When you're aligned with someone who's meant to be in your life, the universe tends to orchestrate your meeting in ways that feel orchestrated. Not by you, but by something larger than you. You might be thinking about someone and then run into them unexpectedly. You might have a dream about meeting someone and then encounter them the next day. You might keep seeing the same numbers, hearing the same songs, or noticing the same symbols. Around the time you meet someone significant, these aren't random events. They're evidence of what quantum physicists call non-local correlation, the phenomenon where seemingly separate events are actually connected by invisible threads of meaning. But here's where most people get it wrong. They try to force synchronicities. They look for signs everywhere, read meaning into every coincidence, and convince themselves that every interesting person they meet is their soulmate because they both like the same obscure band or were born in the same hospital. Forced synchronicities have a desperate quality to them. They require you to stretch meaning, ignore contradictory evidence, and override your actual experience in favor of your hopeful interpretation. Real synchronicities feel obvious, even inevitable. They don't require explanation or justification. They simply are. The universe doesn't send you someone you have to convince yourself is right for you. The universe sends you someone you recognize, someone whose presence in your life feels like a puzzle piece clicking into place, someone who makes you think, "Oh, there you are. I've been wondering when you'd show up." But synchronicities aren't just about meeting the right person. They're about being the right person, being so aligned with your own truth, so present to your own life, so available to the guidance that's always available, that you become a magnet for meaningful connections. When you're living authentically, when you're following your genuine interests and values, when you're showing up as yourself instead of as who you think you should be, you naturally attract people who are doing the same. Your authentic frequency calls to their authentic frequency, and the universe conspires to bring you together in ways that feel magical, but are actually just the natural result of two people living in alignment with their truth. The practice of recognizing synchronicities isn't about looking for signs that someone is your soulmate. It's about developing the sensitivity to notice when life is trying to guide you, the wisdom to distinguish between meaningful coincidences and wishful thinking, and the courage to trust the process even when it doesn't match your timeline or preferences. Sometimes the universe sends you someone not because they're meant to stay in your life forever, but because they're meant to catalyze your next level of growth. Sometimes synchronicities point you toward a person who will break your heart in exactly the way it needs to be broken. Sometimes the meaningful connection is meant to last 3 months, not 30 years. The invitation is to trust the guidance without trying to control the outcome, to be available to connection without being attached to specific forms, to recognize the difference between divine timing and your personal agenda. The manifestation. Industry has taught you that you can visualize your soulmate into existence, affirm your way into perfect love, and raise your vibration high enough to attract your ideal partner. But what if that entire paradigm is actually keeping you from real connection? When you try to manifest a specific person or a specific type of relationship, you're operating from the assumption that you know what's best for you. You're taking your limited perspective, your wounded ideas about love, your unconscious patterns and preferences, and declaring them to be the truth about what you need. But your conscious mind doesn't know what your soul needs. Your ego doesn't know what will actually heal you. Your fantasies don't know what will actually fulfill you. Neville Goddard taught that imagination creates reality, that you can impress your subconscious mind with specific desires and watch them manifest in your external world. But he also taught something that most people ignore. You must become the state, not just visualize the outcome. You must embody the frequency of what you're seeking, not just picture it in your mind. The difference between authentic manifestation and spiritual manipulation is this. Authentic manifestation changes you first. It requires you to become the kind of person who naturally attracts what you're seeking. It requires you to heal the wounds that make you unavailable to love, to develop the qualities that make you worthy of the love you desire, to embody the frequency that matches what you're calling in. Spiritual manipulation tries to change external circumstances without changing internal reality. It tries to attract love without becoming loving, to manifest partnership without becoming whole, to create connection without becoming connectable. It's using spiritual techniques as a form of control, trying to bend reality to match your preferences instead of aligning your preferences with reality. Here's what authentic manifestation looks like in relationships. You stop trying to attract a specific person and start becoming the kind of person you'd want to be with. You stop visualizing your ideal partner and start embodying your ideal self. You stop trying to change your external circumstances and start changing your internal landscape. You heal your attachment wounds, not so you can find someone who won't trigger them, but so you can respond to triggers with wisdom instead of reactivity. You develop self-love, not so you can attract someone who will love you, but so you can recognize love when it's offered and give love freely when it's appropriate. You become whole not so you can find your other half, but so you can share your wholeness with someone who is already whole. When you do this work, when you actually become the frequency you're trying to attract, something interesting happens. You stop being desperate for specific outcomes because you realize you're already complete. You stop trying to force connections because you trust that the right connections will arise naturally. You stop manipulating energy because you realize that authentic energy doesn't need to be manipulated. And paradoxically, this is when you become most attractive. Not because you're trying to be attractive, but because you're being authentic. Not because you're putting out a specific vibration, but because you're no longer putting out any false vibrations. Not because you've manifested love, but because you've become love. The people who are meant to recognize you will recognize you. The connections that are meant to happen will happen. The love that's meant to find you will find you. But only when you stop trying to control the process and start trusting it instead. This doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up on love. It means becoming so active in your own growth, so engaged in your own healing, so committed to your own authenticity, that you naturally attract others who are equally committed to their growth, healing, and authenticity. The universe doesn't respond to your demands, it responds to your readiness. And readiness isn't about having your life together, or being perfectly healed, or knowing exactly what you want. Readiness is about being available to what is, open to what's possible, and willing to be surprised by forms of love you never imagined. There's a cruel irony built into the nature of desire. The more desperately you want something, the more it seems to elude you. The more you chase love, the more it runs away. The more you try to force connection, the more you repel the very people who might naturally connect with you. This isn't cosmic cruelty, it's energetic physics. Desperation has a frequency, and that frequency is incompatible with the frequency of authentic connection. When you're chasing someone or something, you're broadcasting scarcity, the belief that what you want is rare, hard to find, and might not come to you naturally. That energy of scarcity creates exactly what it fears: scarcity. Think about your own experience. When has someone's desperation for your attention made you more interested in them? When has someone's neediness made you want to get closer? When has someone's attempts to convince you to love them actually made you love them? Never. Because desperation repels what it seeks. But here's what's even more subtle. The energy of spiritual seeking can be just as repelling as the energy of emotional neediness. When you're desperately trying to raise your vibration, constantly working on yourself, obsessively reading about twin flames and soulmates, endlessly visualizing your ideal partner, you're still operating from the same frequency of lack. You're still broadcasting the belief that you're incomplete, that something is missing, that you need to do more or be more or attract more to be worthy of love. True surrender isn't about giving up on love. It's about giving up on the desperate pursuit of love. It's about releasing your grip on how love should look, when it should arrive, and who it should come through. It's about trusting that the love that's meant for you will find you without your having to chase it, manipulate it, or earn it. The practice of surrender requires you to become comfortable with not knowing when love will come, not knowing what form it will take, not knowing if it will match your fantasies or exceed them or surprise you completely. This not knowing is terrifying for the ego, which wants guarantees, timelines, and control, but it's liberating for the soul, which trusts the intelligence of the unfolding. When you truly surrender, you stop living in the future of your imagined relationship and start living fully in the present of your actual life. You stop putting your happiness on hold until love arrives and start creating happiness now. You stop preparing for your someday partner and start showing up for your current self, and this is when the magic happens. Not because you finally attracted what you were seeking, but because you finally stopped seeking. Not because you've raised your vibration high enough, but because you've dropped the exhausting effort to raise it. Not because you've become worthy of love, but because you've remembered that you always were. The person who is meant to recognize you will recognize you in your surrender, not in your pursuit. They will be drawn to your peace, not your passion. They will connect with your presence, not your performance. They will love you for who you are when you're not trying to be anyone, not for who you become when you're trying to be everything. But surrender isn't a strategy to attract love. If you're surrendering in order to get something, you're not actually surrendering. You're just using surrender as another form of manipulation. True surrender is the recognition that you don't need anything external to complete you, that you're already whole, that love is not something you lack but something you are. This recognition doesn't make you indifferent to love. If anything, it makes you more available to it, because when you're not desperately seeking love, you can actually receive it. When you're not trying to force connection, you can recognize it when it arises naturally. When you're not chasing someone, you can actually see them clearly. Not every intense connection is meant to last forever. Not every person who triggers growth is meant to stay in your life. Not every relationship that feels significant is meant to be permanent. Sometimes the universe sends you someone not because they're your destination, but because they're your catalyst. Carl Jung wrote about the concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've rejected, repressed, or failed to integrate. In relationships, we often project our shadow onto others, seeing in them what we refuse to see in ourselves. The person who irritates you most is often reflecting back a quality you possess, but won't acknowledge. The person who attracts you most intensely is often embodying something you've disconnected from within yourself. This is why some relationships feel electric but unstable, passionate but destructive, meaningful but impossible. You're not actually connecting with the other person. You're connecting with your own projected material. You're falling in love with the disowned parts of yourself that you're seeing reflected in them. And when the projection inevitably collapses, when you start seeing them as they actually are instead of as the screen for your unconscious material, the relationship often collapses too. This doesn't make these relationships meaningless. It makes them educational. They're not meant to be your forever home. They're meant to be your classroom. They're designed to show you what you've been avoiding in yourself, what you need to heal, what you're ready to integrate. The challenge is learning to distinguish between a relationship and a lesson. A relationship involves two people who see each other clearly, who love each other's humanity, who can hold space for each other's growth without trying to fix or change each other. A lesson involves one person serving as a mirror for the other's unconscious material, triggering growth that would be impossible without the catalyst of their presence. Sometimes the same person can be both, first a lesson, then a relationship. Sometimes you meet someone who initially triggers all your unhealed wounds, brings up all your unconscious patterns, and forces you to confront parts of yourself you'd rather avoid. But if you both do the work, if you both face what you're being shown, if you both grow through the intensity instead of running from it, you might find that once the lesson is complete, a genuine relationship is possible. But more often, relationships are meant to be temporary. They arrive to catalyze specific growth, to heal particular wounds, to prepare you for a different kind of love. And trying to turn a lesson into a relationship, trying to make someone stay who is meant to go, trying to build permanence with someone who was meant to be a teacher, only creates suffering. The key is to receive the gift of what's being offered, without trying to control its form or duration. If someone is triggering your abandonment wounds, the gift isn't necessarily a lifetime partnership. It might be the opportunity to heal those wounds so they don't control your future relationships. If someone is showing you where you've been people-pleasing or losing yourself, the gift isn't necessarily their continued presence. It might be the wake-up call you needed to reclaim your authentic self. The universe is always offering you exactly what you need for your next level of growth. But what you need isn't always what you want. What you need might be heartbreak that cracks you open to deeper love. What you need might be solitude that teaches you to be whole on your own. What you need might be a relationship that challenges every assumption you've ever had about love. The practice is to trust the curriculum, even when it's painful. 2. Extract the wisdom from every connection, even when the connection doesn't last. To receive the healing that's available, even when it comes wrapped in loss. To honor what each person has taught you, even when they're no longer in your life to teach you. Because the truth is, every person you've ever loved has prepared you for the love that's coming. Every relationship that's ended has taught you something essential about the relationship that will last. Every heartbreak has cracked you open to deeper capacity for joy. Every person carries an energetic signature, a unique combination of their emotional patterns, their level of self-awareness, their relationship to their own wounds, and their capacity for authentic connection. This signature is always broadcasting, whether they're aware of it or not. And your nervous system is always reading it, whether you're conscious of it or not. Some people's energy feels immediately familiar, like you've known them forever. Others feel intriguing but slightly off, like a song played in the wrong key. Some feel comfortable but boring, like a warm blanket that you never want to leave, but that doesn't inspire growth. Others feel exciting but chaotic, like a beautiful storm that you want to dance in but wouldn't want to live in. Learning to read these energetic signatures is essential for creating authentic connections. It requires you to trust your felt sense over your mental analysis, to pay attention to how you feel in someone's presence, rather than how you think you should feel, to honor your body's wisdom, even when it contradicts your desires. When you encounter someone whose energy is genuinely compatible with yours, you'll notice specific markers. Your nervous system calms down rather than getting activated. You feel more grounded, not more anxious. You find yourself speaking more slowly, more thoughtfully. You're not rushing to fill silences or prove your worth through words. Time feels fluid. You might talk for hours without realizing it, or sit in comfortable silence without feeling the need to create conversation. You feel more like yourself, not like a better or worse version of yourself. You're not performing or hiding. Your breathing naturally deepens. Your shoulders drop, your jaw unclenches. You find yourself sharing things you don't usually share, not because you're trying to be vulnerable, but because vulnerability feels safe and natural. You feel seen rather than examined. There's a quality of recognition rather than evaluation. After spending time together, you feel energized rather than drained, even if the conversation was deep or challenging. But here's what's crucial. These markers can't be forced or faked. You can't try to calm your nervous system around someone whose energy is actually agitating. You can't manufacture the feeling of timelessness with someone whose presence makes you constantly check the clock. You can't create the sense of being seen with someone who's actually looking through you. The practice of reading energetic signatures requires you to become exquisitely honest about your actual experience versus your hoped-for experience. It requires you to acknowledge when you're trying to make someone fit who doesn't actually fit, when you're overlooking red flags because you want green lights, when you're forcing compatibility that doesn't naturally exist. Most people ignore their energetic reading because they're attached to specific outcomes. They want a particular person to be right for them, so they override their body's signals. They want a relationship to work, so they dismiss their intuitive knowing. They want love so badly that they're willing to accept connection that doesn't actually nourish them. But your energetic discernment is not optional. It's essential for your well-being, your growth, and your capacity to create authentic love. When you consistently override your energetic readings, you train yourself to distrust your intuition, to tolerate what's not healthy for you, and to mistake intensity for intimacy. The goal isn't to find someone whose energy is identical to yours. That would be boring and wouldn't catalyze growth. The goal is to find someone whose energy complements yours, challenges you in healthy ways, and creates a field of possibility that neither of you could access alone. Some of the most profound connections happen between people whose energies are different but harmonious, like two instruments playing in different keys but creating beautiful music together. The introvert who finds peace in the extrovert's joy. The thinker who finds grounding in the feeler's emotional wisdom. The visionary who finds practical support in the builder's steady presence. But complementary energy still requires a foundation of basic compatibility. You both need to be operating from a similar level of emotional maturity, self-awareness, and commitment to growth. You both need to be available for real intimacy, not just the appearance of it. You both need to be willing to see and be seen, to love and be loved, to grow and support each other's growth. The practice of energetic discernment isn't about finding perfection. It's about finding truth. It's about being honest enough to acknowledge when something doesn't feel right, wise enough to trust your body's signals, and loving enough toward yourself to choose connections that actually nourish your soul, rather than just feeding your ego or filling your loneliness. The frequency of pretense. How trying to be good enough blocks true recognition. Most of what you call your personality is actually a collection of strategies designed to be lovable. You've learned to be funny when you feel sad, strong when you feel scared, easygoing when you feel frustrated, interesting when you feel ordinary. You've developed a persona, what Jung called the mask we wear in social situations, that you believe makes you worthy of love and connection. But here's the paradox. The more you try to be worthy of love, the further you move away from your actual self. And the further you move from your actual self, the less likely you are to attract someone who could love your actual self. You end up in relationships where you're loved for who you're pretending to be, not for who you actually are. And that's not love. That's performance appreciation. The energy of pretense has a specific frequency. It feels effortful rather than natural, strategic rather than spontaneous, conditional rather than unconditional. When you're operating from pretense, you're constantly monitoring your effect on others, adjusting your behavior based on their responses, trying to be what you think they want rather than what you actually are. This creates what I call recognition interference. The right person might be in your presence, but they can't recognize you because you're not actually present. You're present as your persona, your strategy, your performance, but not as your essence. And essence can only recognize essence. Authenticity can only connect with authenticity. The cruel irony is that most people are also operating from pretense, so you end up with two personas trying to connect, two strategies trying to align, two performances trying to create authentic intimacy. It's like two actors trying to fall in love while staying in character. The connection might feel real in the moment, but it's not sustainable because it's not based on truth. Breaking free from the frequency of pretense requires you to risk being disliked for who you actually are rather than loved for who you're pretending to be. It requires you to show up as yourself, your quirky, flawed, ordinary, extraordinary self, and trust that the right person will recognize and appreciate your authentic frequency. This doesn't mean being inappropriately vulnerable or sharing your entire life story on the first date. It means being genuinely present instead of strategically present. It means responding from your actual feelings rather than from your calculated responses. It means allowing yourself to be seen in your humanity rather than hiding behind your highlights. When you stop pretending to be worthy of love and start embodying your inherent worthiness, everything changes. You stop attracting people who are drawn to your performance and start attracting people who are drawn to your presence. You stop exhausting yourself trying to maintain an image and start energizing yourself by being authentic. You stop worrying about whether you're good enough and start trusting that you're exactly enough. The person who is meant to love you will love you for your sensitivity, not despite it. They will love you for your weirdness, not in spite of it. They will love you for your struggles, not because you've overcome them all. They will love you for your questions, not because you have all the answers. But you have to give them the chance to love the real you by showing up as the real you. And that requires the courage to disappoint people who were never meant for you anyway. The technology of presence, how authentic attention creates magnetic fields. In a world of constant distraction, scattered attention, and performative connection, genuine presence has become the rarest and most attractive quality a person can possess. Presence isn't about being interesting or charismatic or entertaining. Presence is about being fully here, fully available, fully engaged with what is actually happening rather than what you wish were happening or what you think should be happening. When you encounter someone who is truly present, not performing presence, not trying to be present, but actually present, your nervous system immediately recognizes it. There's a quality of spaciousness around them, of stillness that doesn't feel empty but full. They're not trying to impress you or manage your impression of them. They're not scanning for your approval or calculating their next move. They're simply there, available to what's arising between you. This kind of presence is magnetic, not because it's trying to attract anything, but because it creates a field of safety where authentic connection becomes possible. In their presence, you find yourself slowing down, breathing deeper, speaking more honestly. You stop trying so hard because their lack of effort gives you permission to stop efforting too. But presence can't be faked or manufactured. It emerges naturally from inner stillness, from having done enough inner work that you're not constantly managing your internal chaos, from being so comfortable with yourself that you don't need to monitor your effect on others. Most people think they're being present, but they're actually being strategically attentive. They're listening for what they should say next, watching for signs of approval or disapproval, calculating how to be more interesting or attractive or impressive. Their attention is fragmented between being with you and managing themselves. True presence requires the radical act of forgetting yourself, not abandoning yourself or losing yourself, but becoming so present to what's happening that self-consciousness dissolves. When you're truly present with someone, you're not thinking about how you look or sound or whether you're being interesting enough. You're simply available to the mystery of connection. This quality of attention is healing. When someone gives you their full presence, not their partial attention, while they're also thinking about work or checking their phone or planning what to say next, but their complete availability to this moment with you, you feel seen in a way that most people rarely experience. And when you learn to give this quality of attention, you become someone people never forget. Not because you were trying to be memorable, but because you gave them the rare gift of feeling fully met. In a world where most interactions are superficial, where most attention is fragmented, where most connection is performed rather than real, genuine presence stands out like a lighthouse in the fog. The practice of presence isn't about learning techniques or strategies. It's about clearing away the internal noise that prevents you from being naturally available. It's about healing the wounds that make you self-conscious, resolving the conflicts that fragment your attention, and developing the inner stillness that allows you to be fully here. When you master the technology of presence, you don't need to chase connection. Connection comes to you not because you're trying to attract it, but because you've created the conditions where it can naturally arise. You become a sanctuary for authentic meeting, a safe harbor for real intimacy, a space where souls can recognize each other without pretense or performance. The invisible architecture of attraction. What really draws souls together. Attraction isn't about physical beauty or compatibility or shared interests, though these things might be present. Real attraction, the kind that creates lasting connection, happens at the level of being. It's the recognition of similar depth, compatible frequency, and shared commitment to truth and growth. You're attracted to people who are wrestling with the same existential questions you are, who have reached a similar level of self-awareness, who are operating from the same degree of emotional maturity. Not exactly the same. There needs to be enough difference to create curiosity and growth, but similar enough that you can meet each other where you are. This is why you can meet someone who has everything you thought you wanted: beauty, success, charm, availability, and feel nothing. And why you can meet someone who doesn't match your mental list at all and feel instantly drawn to them. Your soul recognizes what your mind doesn't understand: compatibility at the level of essence. The invisible architecture of soul-level attraction includes similar relationship to their own wounds. You're drawn to people who have done similar amounts of healing work, who have a healthy relationship with their shadows, who can own their patterns without being controlled by them. Compatible nervous system regulation. You're attracted to people whose emotional patterns complement yours, who can stay present when you're activated, who can match your depth without drowning in it. Shared commitment to growth. You're drawn to people who are actively engaged in their own evolution, who see challenges as opportunities rather than obstacles, who are willing to be uncomfortable in service of becoming more themselves. Similar relationship to truth. You're attracted to people who value honesty over harmony, who would rather have a difficult conversation than maintain a false peace, who are committed to seeing clearly rather than seeing what they want to see. Compatible life force energy. You're drawn to people whose vitality matches yours, not necessarily the same level of energy, but the same quality of aliveness, the same depth of engagement with being human. These factors create what I call recognition resonance, the immediate knowing that this person speaks your language, shares your values, and can meet you in the depths of who you are. It's not about finding someone identical to you. It's about finding someone whose differences complement your similarities, whose growth edge matches your growth edge, whose capacity for love matches your capacity for love. But here's what's crucial. This kind of attraction can only happen when you're being authentic. If you're performing, pretending, or hiding parts of yourself, you'll attract people who are attracted to your persona, not your essence. And persona-level attraction creates persona-level relationships, connections that look good from the outside, but feel empty from the inside. The practice of authentic attraction requires you to show up as yourself and trust that the right person will recognize you. It requires you to stop trying to be what you think someone wants and start being what you actually are. It requires you to value being truly seen over being universally liked. The paradox of timing, why the right person comes when you're finally ready to be alone. There's a cosmic joke embedded in the nature of love. The person who could love you best usually appears exactly when you no longer need them to complete you. When you've done the work of becoming whole, when you've learned to give yourself the love you used to seek from others, when you've become genuinely comfortable with solitude, that's when authentic partnership becomes possible. This isn't the universe being cruel or testing you. This is the universe being precise. You can only attract someone at your level of emotional maturity. You can only receive love to the degree that you love yourself. You can only create healthy relationship dynamics when you've healed your unhealthy patterns. Most people try to use relationships to heal wounds that can only be healed in solitude. They want a partner to fix their self-esteem, fill their emptiness, provide their sense of purpose, or heal their childhood trauma. But another person can't do inner work for you. They can support your healing, but they can't heal you. They can love you, but they can't make you lovable to yourself. The preparation for authentic love happens in aloneness. It happens in the quiet moments when you learn to be with yourself without distraction. It happens in the difficult moments when you face your shadows without someone to blame or fix or save you. It happens in the ordinary moments when you discover that your own company is actually quite enjoyable. This doesn't mean you have to be perfectly healed or completely self-sufficient before you can be in relationship. It means you have to be whole enough that you're choosing relationship from wholeness rather than from woundedness, from desire rather than from need, from abundance rather than from scarcity. When you're truly ready for authentic love, you're no longer desperately seeking it. You're no longer scanning every interaction for potential partnership. You're no longer putting your life on hold until love arrives. You're living fully, creating meaning, building joy, pursuing growth, not to attract someone, but because that's who you are. And this is when you become most attractive. Not because you're trying to be attractive, but because you're being fully alive. Not because you need someone to complete you, but because you're so complete that you have abundance to share. Not because you're looking for love, but because you've become love. The person who recognizes you in this state won't be drawn to your neediness or your performance or your potential. They'll be drawn to your presence, your authenticity, your aliveness. They won't want to fix you or save you or complete you. They'll want to share the journey of growth with you, to explore the mystery of existence together, to love each other's humanity while supporting each other's evolution. But this kind of love requires patience. It requires trust in divine timing. It requires faith that the universe knows what it's doing, even when you don't understand the delay. It requires the willingness to keep growing, keep healing, keep becoming more yourself, even when you can't see the destination. The invitation is to fall in love with your own life so completely that you're not waiting for someone else to make it worth living. To become so interested in your own growth that you're not bored without constant relationship drama. To develop such a rich inner world that solitude feels like coming home rather than like punishment. Because the truth is, the love you're seeking is seeking you too, but it's seeking the fullest, most authentic, most healed version of you. And becoming. That version is work that can only be done alone. The sacred pause. Why rushing into connection prevents real recognition. In our swipe-right instant gratification culture, there's immense pressure to know immediately whether someone is right for you. You're expected to feel chemistry on the first date, to know within a few interactions whether this could go somewhere. to either commit or move on without taking time to actually get to know someone. But real recognition often happens slowly. It unfolds gradually as you witness how someone handles stress, how they treat people who can't do anything for them, how they respond when triggered, how they show up when you're not at your best. These qualities can't be assessed in a first impression or even a first few dates. They reveal themselves over time through shared experiences, through the natural ups and downs of getting to know another human being. The sacred pause is the practice of slowing down long enough to actually see someone clearly, instead of projecting your fantasies, hopes, or fears onto them. It's the willingness to be curious rather than conclusive, to gather information rather than making immediate decisions, to let attraction and compatibility reveal themselves naturally, rather than forcing them to appear. Most people skip the sacred pause because they're either desperate for connection or terrified of vulnerability. If they're desperate, they rush toward commitment before they really know what they're committing to. If they're terrified, they rush toward rejection before they have to risk being seen or disappointed. But rushing in either direction prevents real recognition. When you're moving too fast towards someone, you're not actually seeing them. You're seeing your projection of who you want them to be. When you're moving too fast away from someone, you're not giving yourself the chance to discover what might be possible between you. The sacred pause requires you to tolerate uncertainty, to be with someone without immediately knowing where it's going, to enjoy connection without having to label it or control it or predict its outcome, to be present to what is actually happening rather than what might happen or what you think should happen. This doesn't mean being passive or indefinitely ambiguous. It means being actively present while remaining open to what wants to emerge. It means paying attention to how you feel in someone's presence over time, not just in the excitement of newness. It means watching for patterns of behavior, not just moments of chemistry. During the sacred pause, you're gathering essential information. How do they handle conflict? Do they attack, withdraw, or stay present and work through difficulties? How do they treat people who are serving them? Waiters, cashiers, customer service representatives. How do they talk about their ex-partners? With respect and accountability, or with blame and victimization? How do they respond when you're not available? Do they respect your boundaries or pressure you to change them? How do they handle their own emotions? Do they expect you to manage their feelings or take responsibility for their own internal state? How do they show up when you're struggling? Do they try to fix you, minimize your experience, or simply hold space for what you're going through? These patterns of behavior are far more predictive of long-term compatibility than initial chemistry or shared interests or even strong attraction. But they can only be observed over time, through various situations, by someone who is paying attention rather than just hoping. The sacred pause also allows you to notice your own patterns. How do you behave when you're uncertain about someone's interest? Do you become anxious and clingy, or do you withdraw and become distant? How do you handle the natural rhythms of connection and space that occur in any developing relationship? The goal of the sacred pause isn't to protect yourself from making mistakes. The goal is to make conscious choices based on actual information rather than unconscious choices based on fantasy, fear, or familiar patterns. It's to give real compatibility the time and space it needs to reveal itself, and to give yourself the opportunity to show up authentically rather than strategically. The alchemy of masculine and feminine, beyond gender to archetypal recognition. Deep attraction often happens at the level of archetypal recognition, the unconscious knowing that this person embodies qualities that complement your own essential nature. This has nothing to do with biological gender and everything to do with the energetic principles that create wholeness, growth, and dynamic balance in relationship. In Jungian psychology, the masculine archetype is associated with direction, focus, penetration, and the capacity to hold space for what wants to emerge. The feminine archetype is associated with receptivity, flow, intuition, and the capacity to nurture what is growing. Every person contains both energies, but most people have a natural inclination toward one or the other as their primary expression. Problems arise when people are disconnected from their natural archetypal essence, or when they're trying to embody an archetype that doesn't match their authentic expression. A person with natural feminine essence who's trying to operate primarily from masculine energy will feel depleted and disconnected from their power. A person with natural masculine essence who's afraid to step into their direction and focus will feel lost and purposeless. Authentic attraction often happens between people whose archetypal energies complement each other and whose individual expressions of these energies feel healthy and integrated. The person with strong feminine essence might be drawn to someone whose masculine essence feels stable and trustworthy. The person with strong masculine essence might be drawn to someone whose feminine essence feels flowing and alive. But this dance only works when both people are connected to their authentic archetypal expression and have integrated their non-dominant energy. A healthy masculine has access to their sensitivity, intuition, and emotional intelligence. A healthy feminine has access to their direction, boundaries, and capacity for decisive action. The shadow side of archetypal dynamics shows up when people are either over-identified with one energy or completely disconnected from it. The over-identified masculine becomes dominating, rigid, and disconnected from feeling. The under-identified masculine becomes passive, directionless, and unable to hold space for challenge or growth. The over-identified feminine becomes chaotic, boundaryless, and emotionally overwhelming. The under-identified feminine becomes rigid, controlling, and disconnected from intuition and flow. True archetypal compatibility requires two people who are each connected to their authentic essence, while also having done the work to integrate their non-dominant energy. This creates a dynamic where both people can lead and follow, give and receive, hold space and be held, create structure and flow with change. The recognition that happens at this level feels different from personality-based attraction or even emotional compatibility. It feels like coming home to a dynamic you've always known was possible but rarely experienced. It feels like being able to relax into your natural way of being, while also being challenged to grow into fuller expression of who you are. This kind of recognition can happen between any combination of people, regardless of their biological gender. It's about the energy you naturally embody and express, not the body you were born into. It's about the archetypal dance that creates aliveness, growth, and sustainable passion in relationship. The practice of archetypal awareness requires you to discover and own your natural essence while also developing your non-dominant energy. It requires you to stop trying to be what you think someone wants and start being what you actually are. It requires you to trust that your authentic archetypal expression will naturally attract someone whose expression complements yours. The frequency of trauma, bonding versus soul recognition. One of the most important distinctions you can learn to make is between trauma bonding and soul recognition. Both can feel intense, meaningful, and destined. Both can create immediate intimacy and deep connection, but they come from completely different sources and lead to completely different outcomes. Trauma bonding happens when two people's unhealed wounds recognize each other and create a magnetic pull. The anxiously attached person meets the avoidantly attached person, and their nervous systems lock into a familiar dance of pursuit and withdrawal. The person with abandonment wounds meets the person with intimacy fears, and they unconsciously recreate the dynamics that wounded them in the first place. This kind of bonding feels intense because it's activating your deepest fears and unmet needs. Your nervous system interprets the activation as passion, the anxiety as excitement, the familiar pain as love. You feel like you've met your match, but what you've actually met is your psychological material in human form. Trauma bonding relationships are characterized by immediate, overwhelming intensity that feels like destiny, cycles of connection and disconnection that create addictive highs and lows, feeling like you need this person to be okay, complete, or worthy, constantly trying to earn their love or prove your worth. Drama that you mistake for passion, the relationship consuming most of your mental and emotional energy. Feeling worse about yourself when you're with them, despite the intensity of connection. Soul recognition, on the other hand, happens when two people's authentic essences recognize each other. There's attraction and connection, but it comes from a place of wholeness rather than woundedness, choice rather than compulsion, love rather than need. Soul recognition relationships are characterized by calm knowing rather than overwhelming, intensity, consistent presence rather than cycles of hot and cold, feeling more like yourself when you're with them, natural rhythm of connection and healthy space, feeling supported in your growth rather than triggered into your patterns, the relationship enhancing your life rather than consuming it, feeling better about yourself and the world when you're with them. The tricky part is that trauma bonding often feels more exciting in the beginning because it's activating your entire nervous system. Soul recognition can feel almost boring by comparison because it's not triggering your survival responses. Your body doesn't flood with stress hormones when you're with them. Your mind doesn't obsess about where you stand or what's going to happen next. Learning to distinguish between these two types of connection requires you to pay attention to how you feel over time, not just in moments of peak intensity. It requires you to notice whether being with someone makes you feel more grounded or more activated, more yourself or more like someone you think you should be, more trusting of life or more afraid of loss. The healing happens when you learn to be attracted to what's actually good for you rather than what's familiar to your wounds. When you develop enough self-worth that you're not drawn to people who make you work for their love. When you become whole enough that you're not seeking someone to complete you, but someone to share the journey of continued growth and discovery. This doesn't mean that all intensity is trauma bonding or that healthy relationships should feel boring. It means learning to distinguish between the intensity that comes from activation and the depth that comes from authentic recognition. It means trusting your body's signals of safety over your mind's stories of destiny. The mirror of emotional maturity. Why you attract your reflection. One of the most humbling truths about attraction is that you tend to attract people who are at your same level of emotional maturity, regardless of their age, education, or life experience. Emotional maturity isn't about how old you are or how much therapy you've done. It's about your capacity to take responsibility for your inner state, to communicate your needs clearly, to handle conflict without attacking or withdrawing, and to love without losing yourself. If you're constantly attracted to emotionally unavailable people, that's information about your own availability. If you keep ending up with people who can't commit, that's feedback about your own relationship to commitment. If you consistently choose partners who don't see your worth, that's a mirror of how you see yourself. This isn't victim blaming. It's recognition of the unconscious patterns that drive attraction. You're not consciously choosing unavailable people because you enjoy suffering. You're unconsciously drawn to familiar dynamics because your nervous system recognizes them, even when they're not healthy for you. The person who has done deep work on their attachment patterns, who has healed their relationship with their parents, who has developed secure attachment with themselves, will naturally be drawn to others who have done similar work. They won't be attracted to the drama of insecure attachment because it won't feel exciting. It will feel exhausting. The person who has learned to communicate their needs directly, to handle conflict with grace, to maintain their sense of self in relationship, will be bored by people who communicate through manipulation, who avoid conflict or turn it into war, who lose themselves in every connection. This is why working on yourself isn't just about becoming a better person. It's about becoming attractive to better people. Not better in a judgmental sense, but better for you. More compatible with your values, your growth, your vision of what love can be. The shadow side of this reflection principle is that you might resist people who are actually at your level of maturity because they don't trigger your familiar patterns. They might seem too stable, too direct, too emotionally intelligent. Your wounded parts might interpret their health as boring, their consistency as lack of passion, their straightforward communication as lack of mystery. Learning to be attracted to emotional health instead of emotional drama requires rewiring your nervous system's understanding of what love feels like. It requires healing the wounds that make you confuse anxiety with excitement, uncertainty with passion, and struggle with depth. The practice is to pay attention to how you feel in your body when you're with different people. Notice who makes you feel calm versus agitated, seen versus examined, accepted versus judged, supported versus drained. Trust these bodily responses over your mental stories about who you should be attracted to or what relationships should feel like. As you grow in emotional maturity, you'll naturally attract people who match your level of growth. You won't have to convince them to communicate well. They already will. You won't have to teach them to respect your boundaries. They already do. You won't have to earn their love. They'll offer it freely, while maintaining their own wholeness. The invitation is to become the person you want to be with, to develop the qualities you're seeking in a partner, to embody the love you want to receive, not as a strategy to attract someone, but as a way of life that naturally draws in people who share your commitment to growth, authenticity, and conscious relationship. The quantum field of possibility. How consciousness creates connection. At the deepest level, all connection happens in consciousness. The recognition between two people is actually the recognition of shared awareness, of the same essential consciousness expressing itself through different forms, different personalities, different life experiences, but the same fundamental aliveness. This is why the most profound connections often feel like remembering rather than meeting, like coming home rather than going somewhere new. You're not actually connecting with another person. You're recognizing yourself in another form, discovering your own consciousness reflected back through their unique expression of being human. This level of recognition transcends personality, compatibility, shared interests, or even emotional dynamics. It's the recognition of being itself, of the mystery of existence, of the incredible fact that consciousness is experiencing itself through billions of different human forms, each one a unique perspective on the same infinite awareness. When you meet someone at this level, you're not just attracted to their personality or their energy or their potential as a partner. You're drawn to the depth of their presence, the quality of their awareness, their capacity to recognize and be recognized at the level of being. This kind of connection is rare because it requires two people who have done enough inner work to access their essential nature beyond their conditioned patterns, their defensive strategies, their accumulated identities. It requires people who can meet in presence rather than just in personality, in awareness rather than just in emotion, in being rather than just in doing. The quantum field perspective suggests that consciousness is not produced by the brain, but expressed through it, that awareness is not local to individuals, but is the field in which all experience arises. From this view, attraction and recognition happen when two expressions of consciousness align in frequency, when two unique instruments of awareness harmonize in a way that creates beauty, growth, and expanded possibility. This doesn't diminish the importance of personality compatibility, emotional maturity, or practical considerations in relationships. It places them in a larger context, suggests that the deepest level of recognition happens beyond these surface factors. Though healthy surface factors create the conditions where deeper recognition becomes possible. The practice of consciousness-level connection requires you to develop access to your own essential nature, to discover who you are beyond your thoughts, emotions, stories, and identities. It requires meditation, contemplation, or whatever practices help you recognize the awareness that is always present, always whole, always connected to the larger field of being. When you live from this recognition, you naturally attract others who are also living from this depth. Your relationships become opportunities for mutual awakening, for supporting each other's remembering of who you really are, for creating together from the infinite creativity of consciousness itself. This is the ultimate alignment, not just personal compatibility or even emotional resonance, but the recognition of the same eternal awareness expressing itself through different forms, playing the cosmic game of hide and seek with itself, occasionally waking up to its own nature through the mirror of authentic human connection. The universe is not sending you someone to complete you. The universe is offering you opportunities to remember your own completeness through the presence of others who have also remembered theirs. This is not neediness recognizing neediness. This is wholeness recognizing wholeness. This is love recognizing itself in all its beautiful, mysterious, infinitely creative expressions. And when this recognition happens, not as a spiritual concept but as a lived reality, you realize that you have never been separate from love. You have only been separate from the recognition of what you have always been. The person who triggers this remembering isn't your salvation. They're your mirror, reflecting back the truth you forgot you knew, the love you thought you had to find but were already expressing, the connection you believed was missing but was always present. This is the frequency of true alignment, not the desperate seeking of love, but the generous sharing of it. Not the anxious hope that someone will see you, but the quiet confidence that you are already seen by the very consciousness that sees through your eyes. Not the search for your other half, but the celebration of your wholeness in communion with another whole being. Write in the comments, "I choose to recognize love." Let's see how many of us are ready for this level of remembering. Tell me what you'd like explored in upcoming videos. The comments that resonate most deeply might just become your next late-night sanctuary for the soul.